create our pools of teachers at the earliest opportunity and not wait till the end. We need to provide our teachers support and professional development, and the board needs to provide our teachers an avenue of communication so that our teachers feel like their concerns are being heard.
And Ms. Neighbor, I do want to get you a chance to respond. Yes, Mr. Shepard.
Thank you. I do think I explained that parents needed to know where their children were going to go to school. That is a leading factor in our making this decision. So, because we have many parents that say, we need to know how to plan where our children are going to go to school. And that's why this needed to be completed. That's as I stated before.
The next question will begin with Ms. Ousley. I'm sorry, I've lost track. Okay, great. So we'll start the audience questions shortly. This will be from the basket. There has been some press nationally around the treatment of students with overdrawn lunch accounts. Please describe how you believe our district should address this issue.
I don't think we have any business shaming children or pointing out to children that their parents are having economic hardship. I think we need to feed the kids on the front end and figure out what needs to be done on the back end. I know that Shawnee Mission does provide lunches for kids who don't have money, who have overdrawn accounts. I believe they provide them like a cold sandwich and a milk. It's quite possible my children have at some point in time eaten that lunch simply because I forgot to pay when the district called to say your child has a low lunch account balance. So I'm glad that we don't deny food. I think that we should just provide them with the hot lunch. I don't think that they should be given a cold sandwich. I just don't think it's appropriate. I don't think peers need to see a child eating that simply because they know the child eating the lunch. And so, you know, I would just prefer that we do that. I know that there are districts that have implemented just paying for all meals at lunchtime, no matter the child's economic situation, simply because it removes any of the distinction between the children in the lunch line. And I understand that there would be expense with that. I know that there are probably schools in our district that could do that right now, just based on the demographics of the populations of those schools.
You know, I can understand there's a lot of reasons why people don't or can't pay they don't have money to get the hot lunch. But has anybody eaten those lunches? They're terrible. I can't get my daughter to eat a hot lunch. She'd scream and cry. And not every parent has time to make a lunch and have a healthy lunch and all that. This is one of the areas that needs focus. It's not just nutrition. There's tremendous opportunity here with some of our signature programs. We've got families with children that are vitally interested in hospitality and cooking and things like this. And we need more options. We need to try to bring the curriculum in line with reality. And, I got a call today, a robocall from the district telling me that all of our schools who are Title I schools are offering free lunches to any child, regardless if they're a student or not. There's plenty of money there. Children need to eat. They need to eat before they go to school. They need to eat while they're in school. And they need to eat on the weekends and things like that when they're not in school. But fortunately, in our demographic, we really don't have a serious problem here. It's not a problem. It's easy to fix. And I think that as long as the children are eating the proper food, that the taxpayers pay for it. And many of the taxpayers, families in this district, don't send their kids to public school because we don't have the resources for special education. They go to private school. They're spending $15,000, $20,000 a year on it. And the food's better.
I don't know that the lunches are terrible. I'm going to take your word for it.
Don't talk about what I say. No, really.
I have no idea whether or not the lunches are terrible. But what I will tell you is, if you come to my house and you're hungry, we're going to feed you. Kid goes to school, feed them. It's as simple as that. We find a way to give a guy that buys a golf course TIF money, but we can't feed a kid? Come on, think about that. Just think about that for a second. Every kid that walks in the door that wants to eat should be able to eat, period.
Our school district does provide students meals when they have an overdrawn account. There's no discrimination as to what they can eat. I think the article that came about, it was school districts that were treating children differently when they had an overdrawn account. That's not right. The children should not be shamed just because the parent forgot to put money in their account or just because the parent could not put money in their account. Should efforts be made by the school district to try to collect or get parents to put money into the account? Yes, we can't have every child eating for free, but we also have the ability to talk to parents and advocate on behalf of kids that need the free and reduced lunch and provide them applications for that.
Thank you. This is maybe a good educational time. I will tell you right now that we have over 10,000 homeless in Shawnee Mission. I mean, in the Johnson County area, not Shawnee Mission. 10,000 homeless. You wouldn't expect that in our county. Nobody thinks it's here, but it is. We do not shame kids for lunch or anything else. We do not shame them. There's money funds in each of our schools that will pick up the cost of that. Second of all, we do breakfast programs. We do backpack programs. That robocall that someone received, we've delivered over 3,200 lunches this summer to kids that don't have it available. I think we need to know our statistics, and I think we need to do a little bit more homework to know that these kids are safe, they're eating good meals, and we take great pride in serving all of our students, and that means all.
Thank you very much. We are going to move to the second portion of our questions now. Those were questions pre-written by the Shawnee Mission Area Council. I will now be reading some questions that were posed by you, the audience. I've tried to be fair and arrange these thematically and then try to spot which, there's another one, thank you very much. Try to spot which themes and questions are getting asked in various ways. So I'm trying to be fair, trying to honor the questions and topics that seem to be of most interest to you. If I do not get to your question, I apologize. It is nothing personal, but we could stay here until 10:30 if you want. So the first question, we'll start with Mr. Roberge, and we'll do the same order. And so we'll pick up with Mr. Roberge. We'll get a minute and a half each to answer these questions. So several questions along this theme. This is the one I will ask. As the population of Shawnee Mission shifts, more buildings are being classified as Title I. How do you propose to support these schools in order to ensure that all students in Shawnee Mission receive an equal education?
Great question. You know, everyone here should understand what Title I means. It has to do with income, lower quintiles, poverty, right? And every child has the right to have an education. When we talk about facilities, since 1987, when they changed the law and said school districts could sell properties, I've seen nothing but disruption. I went to Ridgeview Elementary, it closed. It's now Kansas City Christian School. Meadowbrook Junior High is now under construction. It's done cost, I don't know how much money, in legal fees and lawsuits, and it completely disrupts. A community is built around a school, and you pull a school out, and you got blight. It's no different than in business. The Title I, English language learners, special education, children from low economic quintiles. That's the 20%, right? 30,000 students, there's about 3,000 maybe. I don't know, I'm just guessing, I don't know. But that's where we need to focus our services. And the solution is partially in what you call the IEP, Individual Education Plan. Every student has one, right? But this has been used in special education. And the solution is what we call peering, general to special peering. Hearing of students who speak other languages. My time's up.
Is that the same question for him?
Yes.
Would you repeat it, please?
As the population of Shawnee Mission shifts, more buildings are being classified as Title I. How do you propose to support these schools in order to ensure that all students in Shawnee Mission receive an equal education?
I think it's extremely important that all students receive an equal education. The biggest thing we have to remember is the demographic of this county is changing quite dramatically. We've seen the history of urban sprawl, and now we see Shawnee Mission South hemorrhaging students. A lot of the people who bought homes in that area, their kids have grown up and they've moved on, and we've got empty nesters there, and people are buying further south of 435. So we've got a lot of issues to address in that dynamic. Those are things that we're gonna have to study more closely. You know, there's not gonna, just like I responded to that other question, there's not a single shot solution for these things. And it's gonna take some deep, intense study to determine how we're gonna manage the changing demographic in this county.
Changing demographics are part of life. It's part of the world that we live in. The Shawnee Mission School District has the Shawnee Mission Education Foundation, which is in place to aid and balance some of the inequities across the school district. Also, there are schools within the district and across the United States that have embraced diversity councils. This is something that Shawnee Mission should embrace. It's something that would allow our district to embrace these changing demographics, and it could return, Shawnee Mission could be a flagship for the state by implementing these types of councils.
One of the hardest things for a school district to do, and I know there's been discussion here about hiring teachers early on. We do that. Our staff is working all the time to go out and look for diversity in our staff, our administrators, everywhere we go. But these people are not out there. And we start early. We start very early. But if the people aren't there, you can't hire them. And that's just what happens. And that's the sad part of what happens. If you look just recently at what happened, or what's happening with our government right now and doing away with some of the Medicare, Medicaid payments and reimbursements, that's going to affect us a great deal on IDEA and ESEA. Last year, Shawnee Mission got $566,327. When that money goes away, guess who has to make it up? If the state doesn't make it up, we make it up. And that goes to our students with disabilities. That goes to cover the students that have federal guidelines that have to be met. We have that responsibility, and we have to meet it, whether it comes out of our regular fund, our regular operations, or if it comes from a special ed fund. But if it's not funded, which our federal government looks like it's not going to do, then that's more money.
One of the concerns that was raised by a parent during the course of the conversation over the boundary line changes was that when they were drafting the boundary line changes, it looked like they were taking the single-family homes out of one of the school's districts that was primarily populated by apartment complexes. And those single-family homes were going to be redistricted into Ray Marsh. And it was actually going to end up concentrating economic hardship at a greater percentage rate at that school. And I think that from a policy perspective, it's possible to alter boundary change policy to say, we're not going to implement a boundary change if it's going to concentrate economic hardship even further at a school. And I think that you can look at policy from the perspective of how do we do this to implement what our vision and mission for the district is. And if our vision and mission for the district is to make sure that every child gets to experience folks from different backgrounds, different economic resource backgrounds, different cultures, different societies, then we can say, you know, let's look at this in a forward-thinking manner and not exacerbate the problem. And so I think that we could definitely do that with regards to any future boundary changes, to say we're not going to continue to apparently intentionally increase segregation based on economic hardship in our schools.
Thank you. The next question, based on several questions asked about this topic, how do you feel about administrators receiving raises while teachers have not had one in years? This starts with Mr. Shepard.
So I don't know that teachers got no raises. But what I can tell you is, I quit my job to be an administrator in this district. Man, it's a pretty sweet gig if you can get it, huh? Hey, you got people in the district making more money than the governor and the attorney general. Folks, I think that it's important to compensate people for their education and for their expertise. But I think when it's at the detriment of the other folks in the district, then we got a serious problem. And we've got to make an adjustment. Talking about a district where we just discussed the Title I, and we've got households that are not doing so well. Cindy gave you statistics. I don't have those statistics. But when you take a look at those salaries in light of those statistics, it's downright embarrassing. Now, all I can give you is honest answers. I don't have a bunch of notes. I'm not rehearsed on this stuff. That's what I'm going to give you. And I can tell you, when I take a look at it, it's not envy over what the next guy's making. It's common sense. I mean, that's one of those things you've got to just, as a school board, as a district, say, how's this look to the public? Maybe we shouldn't do this.
Can we repeat the question?
How do you feel about administrators receiving raises while teachers have not had one in years?
Again, the teachers are the foundation of our school districts. It is difficult to think that the administrators are getting raises when a teacher would not. I appreciate the work that our teachers have done, and we respect them, we respect their education, but when an administrator is getting a raise and the people who are interacting and implementing our curriculum every day do not get one, I think that's difficult. I can understand the reasons why the teachers are concerned about this.
I have a feeling this question is really posted to me. Would that be correct? First of all, what we are paying our new assistant superintendent, interim superintendent, is $34,000 more than he received last year. And why would he get that? He's doing two jobs. We are not hiring a superintendent. He's the interim superintendent. How many of you work 365 days a year during the day and at night for programs? And at night? Not many. That's what our superintendent does, whether it's an activity at a middle school, whether it's an activity at a elementary, or an activity at a high school. Our administrators are out there and in attendance. And I defy any of you to go anywhere and look for a quality superintendent for less than what we are doing. Let me give you one example. I got 30 seconds. Lee Summit, just recently hiring a superintendent. They had 17 RFPs, they sent out 17 RFPs. 5 came back. 3 people, after learning about the district, took their name off the list. 2 left. 1 was older, 1 was younger. The district wanted somebody who was going to stay. So they chose the younger one. That's the only person they had, and guess what? He's being sued by his former district. If that's what you want in Shawnee Mission, that's what we can get. That's a true story.
held various leadership roles in my lifetime, and one of the things I've learned as a leader is never ask somebody to do something that you aren't going to do yourself. If you're not willing to do it yourself, you don't have the right to ask somebody else to do it. I do not believe that my daughter's second grade teacher, when she received an additional 10 students in her class because the third teacher for that grade left, I do not believe that she received a 17% raise increase because she was doing a lot more work with those extra kids in the classroom. I respect what the administrators do, and I know we need quality superintendents, and I know we need quality administrators. But from the perspective of sharing the burden, and from the perspective of making sure that we're all pitching in together and that we're doing this as a team, I think that it is appropriate to make sure that we aren't doing things to compensate folks who their compensation is going to be seen from the perspective of those on the ground as at their expense.
Okay, the question was,
How do you feel about administrators receiving raises while teachers have not had one in years?
well, we need to have a clear career path. Anyone that receives a certification, a license in teaching anywhere in the state of Kansas, but especially in Shawnee Mission, I think, that if they get the additional education and the credentials to move up to a facility administrator position or a principal, and then they get the additional schooling and credentials eventually to become a superintendent, that's a career path. They'll make more money. It's totally different than being in the classroom. But at the same time, we don't see that now. We don't see these administrators coming from the teachers' ranks generally. Or when have we seen a superintendent who went to high school in Shawnee Mission? So we need to work with the Kansas Association of School Boards to find the leaders every couple of years, like Ewan Kaufman when he seeded the farm team for the Royals. He had scouting reports every 2 years. We need this. We can't expect superintendents here to be different than anywhere else. It's a 2 to 4 year gig. Okay, that means they churn off and they come in, solve a problem, and move on. That's okay. But teachers need more than money. They need a good working environment. They need peering. They need mentors, and we need the real leader.
Thank you. The next question, again, trying to ask questions that were repeated in some way. This question was asked quite a number of times, and this one will start with Ms. Hunter. What is your view on technology use in the district, particularly in the elementary grades?
As a parent to kids in the school district, I appreciate the embrace of technology. Our society has moved that direction. Technology is here, and we do need to embrace it. With the iPad initiative that was rolled out, obviously there were some implementation issues with it. This is a prime example of where an advisory board could come into play. If the district could have an advisory board that has parents and teachers as a part of it to talk about the practical aspects and the practical issues concerning a room full of first graders, 25 first graders with one teacher at all different levels, and the teachers on one side of the classroom, what's going on with the kids on the other side of the classroom. These are the issues concerning technology that the board can make changes as we go forward, and they can be positive changes for our kids with the use of technology.
I omitted from my last answer too that our teachers have received raises over the last couple of years too, because we've gone into reserves to, yes they have. And I'll be glad to provide the information for you. But on technology, we need the ability for kids to use this as a tool, but it should not be the main way to learn. Our classrooms work together on projects where the teacher is in charge, and they're given projects to work in teams and to learn how to work as a team. It's used as a tool. It's not used as the entire curriculum. If you use it for the entire curriculum, that student's going to lose touch with just your normal everyday performance. And I know there are a lot of parents that are concerned about how much time their child spends on a computer. We have safeguards in place to try to make sure that children aren't in places on the computer that they shouldn't be. Can that happen? Most assuredly. It can happen at home. It can happen in a classroom. But we work diligently as a group to make sure that all kids are learning what they need to be learning in a classroom, hopefully in team efforts. Also, we have many students that otherwise would never be allowed to have a computer just simply because of monetary means.
So the technology is a tool, and every kiddo needs to have access to those tools so that they have an equal opportunity to learn how to use them. And yes, there's going to be kids in our district who aren't going to have access to iPads or MacBooks simply because their economic demographics that's going to make it cost prohibitive. And so I think it's great that our kids have access to them. I also know that there are a significant number of parents who are concerned about the amount of screen time that their kids are getting, and they feel like this may be exacerbating that as an issue. I also know that there are parents who are frustrated with the fact that they're financially responsible if something happens to that, and they don't know how they would pay for it if something were to happen to the iPad or to the MacBook. In addition to that, there's no opt-out option. So if a parent is really opposed, they can't say, I want my kid to use a pen and paper. Like, my kid has ADHD and being on a screen aggravates it. Or I think my child concentrates better when journaling in a notebook. And opting out isn't an option. And so I think we need to allow parents to have a little bit more control over what they're utilizing those tools for in the classroom. And I think after speaking with a lot of educators, they felt like they didn't receive enough training or support with rolling it out to make sure that they were implementing in the way that was most effective. And so if there had been additional support provided during the rollout process and additional tools provided to educators as they were switching their classrooms over to that, I think it would have been really useful and would have allowed us to miss some of the hiccups.
Well, 38 years ago, I graduated from Shawnee Mission East High School, 1979. Our senior gift was a first edition IBM PC computer. We wanted a Mac, the Apple Macintosh, but they cost twice as much. And anyway, it was like $1,200. We gave this gift with another recent sort of innovation called a sticky note. And this is when they first came out, that's how old I am. And we wrote on the note, we told Dr. Sanford, we want you to take this over to the administration, the school board, whatever, and tell them, we want to see one of these computers in every school, in every classroom, with every student, as soon as possible, as soon as practical. And the thing sat there in the nurse's office for about 5 years, and then it went somewhere. But the point is, we're not talking about muddying the classroom, okay? We're talking about a whole different modality, okay? Non-traditional education. Think about it as homework, okay? Same thing. You watch a video, you read something on a screen. Then you get in a discussion, and you have to give some kind of good input on your discussion. Right? And then you have an assignment based on that. That's all that computers are. We need the tools to help our teachers and our administrators understand how to implement this and extend it so children who are homebound, who are English language learners, can adapt to the conventional things that we do.
Again, our world is changing faster than we know. I remember learning to write BASIC in high school. Now, my 3-year-old knows how to use the iPhone. And if a kid doesn't know how to use an iPhone by age 5, they're behind the other kids. So obviously, I don't know much about the implementation of the one-to-one initiative. I think it's a good idea to have kids on electronic devices, because that's what their future is going to be. With that said, I've heard lots of comments at doors about kids spending too much time, like Heather just mentioned, too much time on them. My kids, they spend the appropriate amount of time on them in our house because we parent. If your kid's spending way too much time and you're concerned about that, there's some responsibility there. Now, if classroom assignments go overboard and you feel like there's a problem with that, you have resources. You can go to your school. You can go to your principal. You can reach out and say, hey, this is too much. I think that the board really needs to take a closer look at implementing things if they're getting that much feedback, negative feedback, implementing things more slowly and more deliberate.
Thank you. We will have time for 2 more questions. This next one was posed several different ways and has not been directly addressed yet tonight. With a national push towards full inclusion for special education students and federal cuts to special education funding, or these proposed federal cuts, what will you do to protect our special education students and ensure that they get the individual attention that they need? This will start with Ms. Napier.
I have a special place in my heart for special ed as I work with the autistic behavior children, 3 to 5-year-olds. And it is a gift to every parent and every child when we can include them in our day-to-day process. As an example, when an autistic child, severe autistic child goes home, they'll just take a hand and wipe everything off the counter because they don't see any reason for it to be there. What we provide in service to that family is the ability to have quality of life, both for the parents, siblings, and for that child. And I think we have an obligation to do the best we possibly can to give the chance for the best quality of life to all of our students. I think we, through Shawnee Mission, know that we have a responsibility to engage and to teach all of our children the best possible way we can. And for that, we will have to use funds, probably in our regular education, because if we're not receiving it from the state or the feds, we have a responsibility by law to make up and to do that in the correct way. Thank you.
So every child has a federally protected right to an education in the least restrictive environment as possible. So we need to be working to make sure that we're not segregating kids, that they're integrated to the extent that they can be integrated, and that they are being educated with their similarly aged peers and having that classroom experience. While there is a federally protected right to this, the federal government has never been really good about funding stuff. And with the proposed cuts to Medicaid, the reimbursement that the district relies on to make sure that the money is there to meet some of those needs is at risk. So there's a very real risk that we're going to lose that Medicaid reimbursement money and be facing significant economic shortfalls in the district. I believe the number is $1.2 million for the Shawnee Mission School District. Obviously, this is going to put us in a crunch. We want those kids to be with their peers. We don't know where we're going to have the money to make sure that that happens. So we're going to need strong voices that are willing to speak out and to say,